Hey everybody, welcome to It's Just Bodybuilding episode 45. Can't believe it, Dusty. On today's show, we have the man himself, the mountain dog, John Meadows, on It's Just Bodybuilding. What's up, man?
Nothing. I'm just realizing after this episode, people have been listening to us for 90 hours.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Remember, if you're going to listen to us that much, you might as well like, share, comment, and subscribe, because that helps us out. So do us a favor, seeing as we don't get the Joe Rogan Spotify money yet.
Bullshit.
So you gotta, yeah, bullshit. I know.
I look just like the fucking guy. Why can't I get the money? Jesus.
You're just a jacked up version, Dusty.
I know, bullshit.
So let's bring Meadows on right away. I know he's waiting in the wings, and I've been wanting to talk to him since his last meeting with the Grim Reaper. So
his most recent
meeting with the Grim Reaper. So let's get Meadows on. Let's see how he's doing. I wait.
Good. I'm gonna eat chicken while we do this.
Meadows.
What's up?
Good to see you, my friend.
There's so many good-looking people on my screen. I don't know who to stare at.
Yeah, maybe
you have a different screen than ours.
Maybe can you tilt your camera down a bit? I can't see enough of your pecs. Need more pecs.
There we go.
I knew you'd have a shirt on, right? I knew. Yeah. I just see you were just looking for the big reveal. That was very dramatic. Dagobah Jim. That's the best fucking shirt ever.
I have quite the collection.
I was just talking the other day. I was working out and we were doing legs, and I have this Pulp Fiction shirt, and it's got Uma Thurman smoking a cigarette on the front, you know, that classic poster. And it's like a 5XL from when I used to be 300, but I still wear it. I don't care. It's just hanging off me. And I got a comment on it the other day. They actually said, "You've got some good shirts, but Meadows has the best shirts." And
I've got a lot of secret sources for my t-shirts.
Yeah, I know. I posted an old picture. It was actually the first picture we ever got taken together, where you had your Holy Chit shirt on.
Yeah, it's Arnold Classic. Yeah.
And I had 3 comments in my message box today. Ask him where he got that shirt.
Man, that was years ago. I don't even know where I got that.
Yeah, you were jacked in that pic. I pulled it up. I was like, man, you had the big jaw.
Yeah.
And then plus the chops.
Yeah, at one point I was kind of big.
At one point.
Yeah.
So I don't know where Dusty and I were just talking, so many places we could start with you. First of all, we're happy to finally have you on the show. We wanted to make sure we knew what we were fucking doing before we had you on. So
once we realized we still didn't know, we better just do it anyways.
Once we thought it was we're never going to get any better. Let's just have them on anyways. But let's just start. I'm sure you're kind of tired of talking about it, so we can move on to other things eventually. But your latest meeting with the Grim Reaper, you told him to get beat again, hey?
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. So
yeah, that's twice now.
That's twice, man. I tell people like. My life is literally like the movie Final Destination, and where death keeps coming and he's really close.
Right.
At some point, I must have cheated death, and he just keeps coming after me, and I know he's going to get me eventually, but I guess not yet. It is frustrating because you do everything you can to take care of yourself and be healthy, and then something like this happens. It is frustrating, but the flip side is I made it. And I'm making, by all accounts, from what the cardiologists tell me, a pretty amazing recovery. So, I took 16 days out of the gym and went back in. I'm going light, but he's like, yeah, normally it's 6 weeks to 6 months before I clear people. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's for normal people. And but everything's going well, man. I've had so many different tests done, and I mean, I wish I could sit here and tell you this is what happened. At this point, I don't even care. People can speculate all they want. I just don't even care. I mean, I'm happy to share with you all the different tests I've had done and things like that. If you guys want to get into that, that's up to you. But it's been interesting.
Well, I do want to kind of bring up how both your 2005 the incident with the intestine where you had that blood clot. Obviously, so now these are two both related to blood clots, both of these incidents. So what did that kind of teach you about, your body, your genetic history, that sort of stuff? Like, I don't know, how does it change how you see things, knowing that there's like a clotting issue, obviously?
Yeah. Well, so my, I don't know if this has anything to do with anything. My biological mom and dad, my dad, I never met. I heard he died real early of a heart attack. I heard he had a pacemaker when he was in his 30s. That's literally all the information anybody would give me about my dad. Because I was trying to find out who my dad was, but I just wanted to know what kind of bodybuilding genetics I had. I just wanted to see, Everybody was like, oh, you must want to, reconnect with your dad. I was like, no, I just want to see what kind of genetics I have.
I just want to see what his arms look like.
I just want to see if he had calves, if he had arms.
Check
so
his insertions real quick, call it a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good. His femurs aren't too long.
Yeah, well, but I never, that's literally that's the only thing I ever heard. And then my mom, she died at a young age, but she was a really bad drug addict and alcoholic. So it's hard for me to say what she died of, right? Because she had a really hard lifestyle. So, I started seeing Dr. Serrano in 1999, and I've got a stack of blood work. Actually, it's right here to my right. It's like this big, So, we watch this stuff all the time, and I'm always doing things to keep everything as good as I can. When I competed, I don't want to say I pushed the limits with the chemical stuff, but when it's as long as a career as I've had, it adds up over time. When Dallas died, it scared the crap out of me. I was like, I didn't do the doses these guys do, but look, I've been in the sport a long time. So
right. Your cumulative doses are working their way up there.
Yeah, exactly. So I went and got a calcium score test done, which detects hard calcium, hard plaques in your arteries, and my score was like a 0018. And I had two cardiologists look at it in Serrano, and all three of them was like, "That's awesome for your age. That's great." I've had so many different tests done. I've had a camera shoved down my throat twice now, where they actually go down into your heart and they can look at plaques, they can look at the size of your heart, all those things. No concerns. The one thing that's not been good for me is my lipid panel. HDL and LDL has not been optimal. It just hasn't been. And but the result of that is usually plaque buildup. I mean, that's
which you don't have.
Which I don't have. So, you can harass me about LDL all you want, but the side effect of low LDL, which was supposed to be, and people don't really understand LDL and particle size and all that stuff anyway. But so that's all been, I'm going to say that aspect wasn't good, but that's why I went straight to the answer. Like, okay, well, I'm going to look at plaques in my heart.
Right.
And, my blood pressure has been really good. I've had a little bit of a trouble with low blood pressure some years. But
which is unheard of.
Yeah. I mean, it would get down to, 105, 110 over 70 something. But I will say this, in all honesty, like a week or two before this happened to me, my blood pressure had started going up, and I test it all the time. And I was like, man, that's weird. Like it's never high. And it was like 140 over 85. But I was like, that's weird. And then, I went to the dentist, and they always check my blood pressure there, and it was high again. I was like, man, that's not right. Like I got
how high was it? Like high and it was normal, or it was like high for you?
Like 140 over 85.
Oh, okay.
Which I consider high.
That's and
that was kind of weird. So, but I didn't think anything about it. So, for me, I'm just wondering, was that clot there all along, and then it just got worse at the? I don't know. I just don't know. But when all that happened, I was just doing a light workout. I'm still a powerlifter at heart. I was doing my old Louis Simmons dynamic work, my light speed sets. So I was doing that, and I got up, and I was like, okay, we're going to move on to the next exercise. And then all of a sudden I felt this pain, like unbearable pain in my chest. I was like, man, that doesn't feel right. And then I had a hard time breathing. I was like, okay, now something's bad's going on now. Anyways, I don't want to bore you guys, but long story short, they rushed me to the into the cath unit at the hospital, and they stuck the catheter down my brachial artery and into my chest. And he said, "Yeah, you've got a blood clot, and it's in the left ascending artery, which is the widowmaker. That's the big boy, and this is a big deal." And then there was another blood clot off of one of the branches. So they started pumping me full of heparin, which is a blood thinner. So I didn't get a stent. I didn't have a surgery where they did surgery. Like they literally just put a thing up in my arm into my chest, and then they gave me IV heparin.
So did you at any point have all the heart attack stuff going on, like the arm pain and did you think that you were having a heart attack before they told you?
Yeah, so my left arm started hurting. And so initially when it happened, this is one of the things I've been thinking about. So when I felt the chest pain, I thought, did I bruise my sternum? Did I hit the bar on my chest? Because I had a bruised sternum 15 years ago. And I remember it was really painful. And I was like, man, but I'm pretty good. Like you guys have seen me bench. I don't bounce stuff off, I was like, man, that's really weird.
But at your age, a sternum can just shatter on its own,
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I am like that character in Unbreakable, but the opposite guy, the Sam Jackson character.
Mr. Glass.
Mr. Glass. So I am, but then I had a hard time breathing. And I was like, at first the guy was with me. I said, man, just take me home. And then he looked at me. He's like, are you sure? And I was like, you know what, man? Go ahead and call the ambulance. This is bad. And that's when my left arm started going numb. And then the guy showed up and he puts the EKG on me and he's watching it. And I said, what's happening? And he said, you're having a heart attack. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I thought I was, but so, then all kinds of stuff goes through your mind. I got kids, I got two 11-year-olds, and the only thing that's going through my mind is my kids aren't going to have a dad. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and all I can think about is, son of a bitch, man, my kids aren't going to have a dad. That sucks, Mm-hmm. And then I got to the hospital, and they tested me for COVID first of all, and then they put me in the like I said, in the cath unit, and he said, well, I think you're going to live, so that's the good news, So they gave me the IV heparin, and they put me in ICU, and I was in a lot of pain. Eventually, they got that under control. Then the clots melted, and here I am.
Damn.
So there you go.
The story is a lot less stressful than actually what happened. The way you roll that through, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, what I'll say is, when in 2005, when I got rushed to the hospital, I was dying. I was bleeding to death. I was in shock. And as I was getting wheeled in emergency surgery, I had this overwhelming feeling of sadness because I wouldn't see my friends anymore and my wife. I just kept thinking, man, I want to miss my friends. So I told my wife to get out her notepad. So she got out the notepad, just picture them pushing me down the hall and her beside me. And I said, man, Mary, make sure you tell James I'm really going to miss him. Make sure you tell Daryl he was an awesome friend. Because I didn't think there was any way I was going to survive. If you would have saw the pile of blood that came out of me, and it changed my life. Because when I woke up in ICU, I felt like I had a second chance. I woke up in ICU, and there were a couple nurses there, and I said, am I alive? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, am I going to live? And they're like, yeah. And I had all these tubes in me, but anyways, it changed my life. I went back to work at Chase, and my feeling of what a big deal was before and after are two different things. So you know how we get worked up over little stuff all the time. Yeah. So that is what turned me into the calmest dude you could meet, because I realized that what I thought was a big deal isn't really a big deal 99% of the time. Mm-hmm. And I went back to work, and I worked at Chase, which is a real high intensity environment, and they had all these big projects and everything. And I was I was the calm guy after that. And so it actually helped my career, because I got to manage, they're like, well, John can handle stress. He can handle a lot of stress.
Throw it on him.
Yeah.
So, he will never have a heart attack.
Yeah, nothing's going to give him a heart attack. So it kind of changed my life and my personality to a degree, to not be so stressed out. And I would say when this last one happened to me, I didn't exactly feel positive from it. I felt down. I felt down for a lot of different reasons. I had thousands of messages that were positive in nature, mm-hmm. but I also had a lot of negative stuff. I'm never going to follow you again. If this is what happens, if this will happen to me because of the food you suggest, I'm never following your diet advice again. And, I just got a lot of people saying a lot of things about me. And look, I know 99 out of 100 are good.
Yeah.
But the little needling, there was a doctor.
The one's always the one you remember.
I try to remember that when I talk to my kids. Like, I try to separate compliments and constructive criticism, because Dusty's absolutely right. You remember the needling, the little stuff. Mm-hmm. And, there was the doctor on Generation Iron that's a scumbag that was talking trash about me. And so, but I also had doctors from all over the world reaching out to me. I follow you, I'll help you any way I can. So I had this massive outpouring of positivity, and I'm really glad I did, because there was a lot of people too that was, I told you he was lying. He doesn't just take 200 mgs of test a week. I'm like, well, I've been honest my whole life about this stuff.
Yeah.
So I wish I could say it made me a better person, and I know that it will, but I'm still a little frustrated, and I'm still a little beat up mentally from it. Mm-hmm. But physically, though, I'm coming back pretty well. I'm just kind of waiting mentally to come back and be in a good space. So,
go ahead, Dusty.
The spin that I have with this, though, John, and I mean, I'm glad we have a place to kind of bring it up, is I've been really obsessive about my blood work and those types of things. And I always have Dante look at it, and he's always, if I see any number off, I'm like, oh shit, we got it. And he's like, relax, you're fine. I see blood work all the time. But when that happened with you, because I know as for a fact all the things that you do and all the additional precautions you do that I don't do, I text him. I'm like, hey, what other tests do I need to do? If somehow John can get sick, I'm not happy with what we're doing. And I'm like, I feel like, just from my guessing, I'm like, I think I've pushed the limit more than he has, and I haven't been as precautious. So I'm hoping that a lot of guys take that stance too. Because I'll be honest, when Dallas and a lot of these guys die, not to be a dick, I'm like, well, they're doing shit I would never fucking do.
Yeah.
So I can immediately dismiss that. Like, I'm like, I mean, I don't mean to be bad, but a lot of these guys, when they die, I'm like, yeah, but you chose it.
Yeah.
When you had an issue, and I now understand more clearly that it was more genetic than anything, but it was still a wake up, like, oh shit, okay, as good as I'm doing, I can do better. And I'm hoping that a lot of guys take that route. It's like, because you're not somebody who was an asshole that was acting invincible. In fact, you were being extremely cautious, thinking about your family, thinking about those things with every move you make. Yeah. And it definitely enhanced, I'm literally like, I just had a guy, I didn't even tell you about this yet, Ron. I had a guy who I said, hey, I need your blood work done. And he got a good deal, $500 for everything. And he was like, well, how often am I going to need to do this? Because I can't be wasting this kind of money multiple times a year. And I was like,
wow.
I'm sorry, wasting. Okay, that's an interesting choice of the word. Yeah. But, I'm hoping that from this episode and from you getting out there, John, that more people realize, like, you can't be too cautious if we're going to play this game at any level,
Well, and, I would also say that I think about guys who have died, and I think about my situation where I felt pain in my heart. And I wonder how many guys just said, you know what, I'm going to rest this. I'm going to sleep it off. I'm going to rest. Right. I wonder how many guys would have actually lived if they would have just called for help. I don't know, but I suspect the way we think, the way guys are, well, I'll just sleep it off. If I would have done that, I wouldn't have woke up, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think about that. I got a message a week later, a week after I put my video up. It kind of recounted what happened. And the guy said, 4 days ago, I was in a gym. I had watched your heart attack video, and I felt the exact pain you were describing. So I called the ambulance. I dialed 911. They brought him in, and he had like 4 or 5 arteries that were blocked. And he was like, they immediately had to put a stent in and do all this stuff. And he was like, I started to just say, it's not a big deal, still chest pain. But I thought back about your video. I showed my wife that, and I said, hey, if nothing else, maybe we help save this guy's life. And I just think about guys and how they are. And I hope if guys feel that kind of stuff, like, call for help, So that's went through my mind a lot. I'm wondering, like a lot of these guys have had heart attacks. I wonder if they just would have called for help. But anyways, so.
Yeah, that's it's also, I find it interesting that you got, I don't know why I shouldn't be surprised, but I find it interesting that you got like vile messages from people. I mean, it shouldn't surprise me. I guess, you know, with the way Twitter is and the way Facebook is and just the way social media is.
It's mainly YouTube.
Is it mainly YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube is like the Instagram stuff was 99.5% positive, but you got to realize, man, when you really get into YouTube and like I focus a lot on that. Mm-hmm. YouTube is full of angry people, man. It's really angry. And mine, like if you look at the comment section of my videos, it's actually really clean compared to the most of them you'll see. Mm-hmm. But I mean, YouTube, man, there's some people in there that are very angry and not happy. So
yeah. Apparently they have a lot of free time.
They have a lot of free time, yeah.
A bold and battle-ready focus formula that takes no prisoners and shows no mercy.
So I had a whole bunch. Well, first of all, the fans bombed us with questions. So there are some great ones off this list here.
Cool. We only need you for 6 hours today.
We only need 6 hours. But I wanted to ask you some questions. So you're sort of I guess you're not really a few years ahead of me on the actual calendar, but this whole being retired thing that I'm doing, you know. We had a workout just what was that, last October when you were up here?
Yeah.
You trained legs with me and my training partner.
Yeah, you guys about killed me.
Oh, we were just trying to keep up to you. You couldn't let the mountain dog down, you know. But I just wanted to say, like, I find that since I retired, I have learned so much more about my body, and I'm wondering what you have to say about that. I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised how much I've confirmed and how much I've learned.
So I just had a conversation the other night on the phone with a guy for 3 hours, and it was the same conversation you and I are talking about. And I think when you retire, you reflect and you look back. What did I do that was really working? And you just kind of like sit back and you think a little bit more. And like, I'll give you kind of a little bit, some excerpts of our conversation. And we were talking about building shoulders. And I said, you know, I found that anytime I was doing my incline barbells, my shoulder thickness was fine. Like, all I really needed to get really good shoulders was the swings that I do for rear delts and side delts, and then sometimes do them all the way up. Like, when I did that, my shoulders were really big and round. And so the point of our discussion was, that's really, looking back, that's probably all we needed to do. And I think the end of the conversation was, we probably did more than we really needed to do. And I think Dusty's actually ahead of us in the game there. Dusty does a good job of knowing what works for him, and he just sticks to it. The other thing I would say is that I think that there are some people that probably do grow a little better from volume. And a lot of times those are the people that maybe can't handle quite the intensity. Mm-hmm. Like, if someone tells me, you know, I'm going to do 30 sets for chest, like, there's no way they're training like Dusty. There's no way.
Right. No,
like, that's impossible. So I think there's some people that can't go there. And so for a little extra volume, you got this group of people that it probably is the best option for them. And then you got this group of people who probably are more like Dusty and more like me later in my career, where let's work up to the tough set and then bam, let's unleash. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much where I was the last 4 or 5 years. And then you got another group, and this is probably where I'm more unique, that I actually do need a lot of change. It doesn't need to be a lot of exercises, but if I do the same workout twice in a row, I swear to God, the second time I do it, it doesn't feel as effective as the first time. So there are base movements that I really like. You know, there's a low incline barbell press for chest. You know, there's you know, like a one arm dumbbell row I really like for lats. You know, I love leg curls for my hamstrings. But then once you get beyond those exercises that you really love, like, I really find that for me and some people, this other third group of people, I'll call it, they actually need a lot of variation. Mm-hmm. And that variation works if you still train intensely. So think about this from a physiological perspective. What makes the muscle grow? Well, you need good activation, you need good loading, and you need to train the muscle fibers to exhaustion. So if you're doing that, what difference does it make what the exercise is? The exercise is you should just pick something that you feel well and it targets what you want to hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's literally it.
I would say all it is tissue under stress.
Tissue under stress for, a certain amount of loading until exhaustion. Like if you do that, it doesn't even really matter what the exercise is. Mm-hmm. As long as it's an exercise that works well for you and it's an exercise that is safe for you to perform, then I really think that if you really broke it down for advanced people, and I'm not talking about beginners or intermediates because that's a completely 180 discussion, but if you take somebody who's advanced, I literally think that they could rotate every single exercise they do, every single workout forever, and they would be just fine as long as their intensity is where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. As long as that's where it needs to be, because if you're pushing the muscle, you're pushing the muscle. If you're picking the right exercise for you, then you probably got the right loading, you got the right activation, you have all those things. Right. So that's something that, I don't know if I've ever put that in writing. People would have, oh my God, Meadows went off his rocker, but
you're off your rocker a long time ago, my friend.
Yeah.
I think around pro qualifier number 13, you were certifiable. So here's another thing that I find myself more fascinated with now that I'm retired and looking back and looking at how everyone trains. How much do you think suiting the training style to someone's mentality matters as opposed to what their body needs? Because how connected are those two things?
They're super connected.
Right. How do you like, how would you, I don't know. Like I think of myself, everything I do in life is either 110% or 0. And that was before bodybuilding. So it was already a personality trait. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I gravitated towards that style of training. That's why, like, when I found Dorian, I was like, oh my God, this makes sense. Right. And that sort of stuff. How much do you think it is, like, I almost think sometimes it's more important that they mentally connect with the training style as opposed to what their, like, cellular physiology requires. Cause that's almost, I don't know. How do you think about that?
Well, if you think about the examples I just gave you, a lot of that's mental.
Right.
So if I told you, okay, Ron, I want you to do 40 sets for back today, that's not mentally, you couldn't do that. You could push yourself to a degree and then you would just be like, man, I'm not getting any benefit out of this, because you know that at the end of the day, intensity is what really matters. You know that. Mm-hmm. So you also know that for you to do 40 sets, you can't train. You're not, there's only been probably one guy in history that could do that, John DeFendis. But you know that you're not going to be able to do that. Okay. You don't have an unlimited supply of dopamine and all these, you can't do that. So some people, but you have some people that just can't go there. Like they can't do a hard cluster set. If you tell them, I want you to leave 1 rep in reserve, then they stop and you're like, man, that was probably 6. That's the problem I have with a lot of these reps in reserve, which I think I use it. I use the RPE charts in my programs. And
right. It's easy to use and it's almost impossible to teach.
Right. Because you tell someone leave 2 reps in a tank and what's that look like? Okay, I think usually there's 6 reps or 5 reps when you say 2. So it's, somebody's got to be really in tune. So that's why people do percentage-based training. Well, I'm just going to use percents. But hey, you don't feel the same every time. Yep. You may not have slept the night before, so that max would have been different. So that's not perfect either. Yeah. So at the end of the day, this is the fail-safe. This is how you become successful. You just get to a set in the exercise you're doing where you literally go all out until you can't do anymore. Because I can't do anymore is I can't do anymore. The weight will stop moving. And then you've truly done what you need to do. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how you solve that problem. Then it becomes, okay, which exercises do you do it on? Do you do them squats? No, that's probably a bad idea of doing a squat to failure.
Not safe, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. But could you do it on like a leg extension? Of course you could. Could you do it on the dumbbell bench press? Of course you could. Do as many as you can, then drop the dumbbells. So then it becomes pick the right exercises. What can you recover from? okay, I'm pretty sure I could handle 2 hard cluster sets of workout. See, I tell people I'd like to see them do 2 cluster sets, and they're like, that's not much. But like Dusty, 2 hard cluster sets is actually a lot of work.
Yeah, it's brutal.
That's a lot of work.
Dusty's rest pauses. He'll do 1 rest pause set, and it maths out to like 10,000 pounds.
Well,
you know what's funny, John, is that's kind of been my style with training people now. They'll be on a program similar to mine when they come to me, and then the very first thing I do is put on a program that's higher volume. And I just got a guy last night. He immediately pushed back. He was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And I told him, I said, "Just trust me. You're going to film your sets. You're going to send them to me. And in a few months, you are not going to be able to do this workout anymore because I'm going to teach you intensity. I could not do what I just sent you. It won't happen. I'm positive you can do this." You know what I mean? Because they don't know what that line is. And so it's like what you're following me down this road because you're not taking it there to that place, it's not enough. You're going home rested. I'm going home crying. Because as you know, I mean, we've worked together. I've worked with Dante. And I always laugh because people think your guys' programs are so different, but they're very similar because there's really like 3 sets. It's just how you get there. Like one of my favorite movements of you is the lying leg curl. We do like 6 sets of 6, but only the last one is the absolute failure. And then it's a triple drop and then partials. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's just 1 set. Because the first 5, I'm just like, okay, I'm fine. Okay, I know which weight to use, and then it's like, okay, give me a few minutes because I'm about to go to hell. Here we go.
That's the mentality. And, those early sets are just to prepare you. It's just to prepare your body. It's to not exhaust you. And
do you also factor in, like, I find I never used to ever, but now that I'm at this stage of my life, I sort of factor in those sets a little bit when I'm adding up in my head my overall volume. Like maybe not the 135 for 20, but the prep sets, when you're doing like 300 for 8 and then racking it. I will sort of think like instead of just thinking of my work sets now, I think of my work sets, and then I sort of leave a little bit of room for how much other weight did I move that kind of mattered. Mm-hmm. Do you think that way now too?
Yeah, so I think one of the mistakes I made early on when I started writing my programs is I had too many like sets of 10. Like on the leg press, I might say do 1 plate for 10, 2 plates for 10, 3 plates for 10, 4 plates for 10. That's a lot of volume, but I don't think I was nailing programming. Not that I'm doing it perfect now, but I think so. Eventually, I got to the point where I was like, no, let's just do 1 plate for 15, 20. 2 plates for 15 and 20. Then let's just do sets of 3 to 5 and work our way up, because that's not going to tire you out. So you can do your 3 to 5s. That's not going to exhaust. If that tires you out, then you got big problems.
Right.
And then we'll unleash. But those sets get you up to that point safely, because there's a lot of people will be like, I'm not going to take those sets. I'm going to do 1 or 2 warm ups, and I'm going right to the. Okay. Good luck with that.
Wait for things to snap.
Yeah. Good. Your orthopedic surgeon's going to be very happy with that training plan.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But that's kind of how. Now sometimes I will want to do an extra set. But so before the hard set, then maybe I'll leave 2 reps on a tank. And I count that as a set. I think if you look at volume, I don't think that a lot of us are that far apart. I think it's just the way we count it. I mean, I know some guys that train with Mincer, and for the majority of his career, he would train the same way. He would do sets leading up to his hard set. And I was at a seminar with Dorian. We were both presenting in Canada, and I had the same conversation with Dorian. Same thing. No, John, I don't walk in and put 400 on the row and do, I do 1 plate, 2 plates, and 3 plates. I just don't exhaust myself. Now, some people will count those. They'll say 1 set, 2 set, 3, 4. So in my programs, I was writing like this is 20 sets, but in my heart, I knew it was really 4 or 5.
Right.
It was just the way I was counting the sets. So that's how I got this high volume early in my career. It was deserved. But then when I started bringing it down, people still associated me with high volume. But you looked at Dante's plan and you looked at mine, it was like, that's really the same number of hard sets. Like, it's really the same. It's just that
you wrote them down.
Just wrote them down, right?
Yeah, because it was like common sense on the other programs. I mean, like if I'm deadlifting 800 pounds, I'm going to touch every plate between, like I literally do 135, 225, 315. I don't skip one. But by the time I'm at 405, I do 2, 495, 1. You know what I mean? Like, and on the way up. And then it's literally just pick it up, put it down. And I don't even decide. This is something I tell my guys too, is I might do 585 for 2. Even though just because I didn't like that first rep. Let me make sure. Okay, cool. Now go up again. But they're all just don't waste any energy. Just find that groove. You know what I mean? I think that's where, like you said, it gets missed is you wrote them down. So people, basically you were making sure people weren't dumb and going, okay, 135, 225, okay, 800. Yeah. No. Not to mention if I did that bar wouldn't fucking move. So
no. I also think a mistake I made was when I was younger and invincible. I wonder if I maybe could have used a little bit more progression to my main set. Like I think I used to make too big of a jump. Like I never go more than 2 plates on the leg press now. I've had some injuries and stuff. So 2 plates, 4 plates. I usually go up by 2 plates at a time. But I remember when I was younger, I'd do 2 plates and go to 6 plates.
Oh, that sounds crazy to me.
and then maybe from 6, I'd go to 9. So now you're doing 3 plate aside jumps.
Yeah.
And then from 9, I go to 12 and do my like all out gut buster knee wrap set with a nosebleed.
Just adding 270 pounds per jump.
Yeah. And to me, I'm like, oh, well, I did 4 or 5 warm-ups, but it's a massive amount of weight you're winding up with. And I didn't think like, I thought of all exercises the same.
Right.
Like, you're doing a 50-pound dumbbell curl. Well, you can go from a 25 to a 35 to a 50.
Right.
Yeah. Very similar with a 2,000-pound leg press.
I wasn't, I think maybe I could have used more of that, friendly volume, I guess you could call it. So there are some things now that I do more of it on because, certain joints on my body, I just want them to make sure they're like, really greased up. Mm-hmm. But then other things, it's still just like John said, like the 5 rep prep set, So it's funny how semantics cause so much divide, and it's all the way into nutrition as well. And, people talking about grams of carbs versus, some people don't count their fibrous vegetables and other people count all the carbs and they're fighting about how many grams of carbs are on. And at the end of the day, it's amazing how similar everyone does things.
Mm-hmm.
For
sure. Yeah.
Did you want to fire John some cues off your IG?
Not really. I just want to use all of mine, but I guess since I asked these people,
you can go for it.
I should let them have their voices, huh? We do this, John. I don't know how much you've watched, but it's like our running thing where we have the best intentions to have these questions answered, and then we end up answering 3 of them. All right, here we go. We got a lot of them.
I got a whole list of great ones. You want to go first?
Well, we could do like a speed round.
Yeah, no shit. We might have to. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna start at the top. What did you do that you think helped take your physique to the next level when you had your biggest jump in your career, John?
Well, that was easily 2011 to 2012. That's when I went from competing from 212 to about 222. And that had everything to do with frequency and focus on recovery. That's why I'm such a psycho when it comes to intra-workout, because that allowed me to work out and start training the body part a second time during the week. And that's easily in the last 20 years the best progress I made.
Nice.
Did that continue to work for you? Like, or did it just sort of give you like a big jump and then you sort of like, we're back to the grind again? Like,
I would
sort of like when you go on creatine and you gain the 5 pounds, but then it stops,
Well, if you guys remember, I used to compete in the super heavies. When I was doing masters, I was actually competing at 226.
Yeah.
And one year at the Team U, I was actually 229. But then I got to a certain point where it's like my frame can only hold so much, and I'm making my body actually look worse.
Right.
And I think that so this is okay. I'm a little off tangent here, but I think this is an interesting discussion. So I actually love talking about this with people who are experienced. So people talk a lot about the differences between bodies looked in the 90s, obviously, versus today, right? Everybody's talking about it. And here's what my position is. I don't think that the guys in the 90s were way harder or leaner than the guys now. Here's what I think. I think the muscles looked different. I think they were more separated. If you look at like Sean Ray competing at 211, Leela Broad competing at 180, Rich Gaspari competing at 212. Like these guys were competing in the 212 class. But look at their muscle separation. Look at Charles Claremont. Look at Moonzer. Look at how deep their muscle separation is. I think the guys now have gotten so big, they blur lines. Agreed. Muscles get so big. The guys now are 230, 240, 250. Like Lee Haney was, probably in the high 240s, and he was a beast. And
he was the biggest guy up there, yeah.
Everybody now is 260 or 250 or 240.
At 5'7".
And I think but it's one of the things I've noticed, is as I gained more weight, I lost those really awesome lines that I had when I was lighter. Mm-hmm, and I personally like those lines, the deep muscle separation. Like Flex Wheeler at the 93 Arnold Classic is a great example. He was somewhere around 220 pounds.
Yeah.
But his muscle separation was amazing. It was amazing. And so this was an interesting thing. So when I got out of the hospital, obviously I'd been in ICU and didn't train. So a couple weeks ago, like the separation of my legs was back. Like I had the deepest groove in my rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, like that spot was deeper than it's been. Like that's what it looked like when I was at 190 pounds. It was super deep.
I saw that picture you put on Instagram with your shorts up.
Do you see feathering on my
tear? You were completely diced.
And so I was about 210 pounds. And that separation I had came back as everything came down. And I was like, you know what? That's really cool. That's the look I liked, is that separation and that quality of tissue. So I think the guys now are shredded. I think they're hard as a rock. Their glutes are all shredded. I just don't think they have that detail, that intricate detail, because they're so big. They're so puffed out now.
I think a lot of guys have that view, though. I know Fuad was just talking about that recently, how he reached a point where his physique got bigger, but he personally thinks it's not as good as it used to be when he was lighter, in his earlier days. But his conundrum is the lighter one won't get a look.
Yeah, that's
against these guys, which is brutal, because I agree. I mean, I look, and there's definitely a line where you're like, okay, this is the preference I have, but what's going to give me the best shot? Because I agree with him. Like, I followed Fuad when I was first starting bodybuilding. He was like one of the guys that was actually writing and doing and blogging and stuff. And I just thought he had the craziest physique, like, because shoulders are wide, waist was tight. You know what I mean? And you're just like, damn. And then you find out he wasn't that big. He just looked that big.
Right.
Yeah.
That appearance. I felt like he looked as big as he looks now, but he was 20 pounds lighter, or more.
Yeah.
I had some questions about West Side.
Okay.
I've never been to West Side. Everyone's seen the documentary. Everyone's read the stories and heard about, all those guys. I just want to know, like, tell me about the first time you went to West Side Barbell.
So I was in college. I went to this little school in Southern Ohio called Wilmington College, and I was there for 3 years. And honestly, I thought I was on the tip of becoming a pro bodybuilder. That's how delusional I was. I was winning everything in Ohio when I was 20, 21 years old. So I thought, oh, this pro card thing, it'll be easy. So I transferred to a school called Capital because it was right down the street from World Gym on East Livingston and on the east side of Columbus, which is where all the good bodybuilders, powerlifters, like that was the animal gym. So while I was there, I met some guys that also trained at West Side Barbell, and you had to have an invite, obviously, to come in there. And I had never done powerlifting in my life. The first time I ever deadlifted was when I was 21 years old at World Gym. They said, have you ever done deadlift? And I said, no. Now, I had already won 3 shows by that point, maybe more, maybe 4 or 5, but I had never done a deadlift. So they're teaching me how to do deadlifts, and they're like, man, why don't you come over to West Side? So I went over there. Now, I was already squatting. I would go in before class. The gym opened at 6. By 6:45, I would have 5 plates on the bar, doing sets of 15 with it.
Holy shit.
So I went to West Side, and I just went in there with a humble attitude, and because I was very appreciative that they would let me in. They didn't really like bodybuilders. Mike Francois was over there at the same time. Mike and I were the 2 bodybuilders over there. So I just said, you guys tell me what to do, and I'll just Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. So I went in there every day and I just said, what do you want me to do, Louie? And he would tell me and I would do it. And I'd say, thanks. And I'd go home. And that's why I had such a good relationship with Louie, because it was just, he would tell me what to do. I would shut my mouth. I would do it and I would leave. And so anyways, when I first went in there, so it was on Demarest Avenue on the west side of Columbus. So you walk in, on the right-hand side, there's a lat pull down. Then there's 2 squat racks. There's a reverse hyper. There was some benches, and there was a supported T-bar row. And then there was maybe one other thing. That was the gym. That was it. So I was like, this is where all the world champions train? Like literally the strongest guys in the world train here?
You're looking for the rest of the gym?
Yeah. So there was no air conditioning. It was in the middle of the summer. And the guys in there went nuts. That's when Chuck Vogelpool was still there. Dave Tate was there. To this day, I've never seen anybody that could train as hard as Chuck Vogelpool. I mean, Chuck was a straight out animal, like scary animal. And
yeah, you couldn't put him in a normal gym, eh?
No, that'd be a bad idea.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And it was amazing. I love those guys. It was you get there and Louie would tell you what to do. And I was a really good squatter. Like Louie said, in 3 years, you're going to squat 1,000. So my problem was I had a really crappy bench. So they took me, I would train there for a little while, and they took me to a meet. I did in Toledo, Ohio. And I didn't really know what I was doing. Louie had me start off with, my opener was like 585 on the squat. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I can do that like 20 times. And he's like, yeah, this is your first lift ever. Let's just get the lift and then we'll go from there. So I came up so fast with the bar, I fell down, almost fell on my butt. So I got red lighted. So the next one, Louie's like, just take it again. I was like, man, that's light. So I did a slow rep. Like I intentionally did a slow down, a slow up so I wouldn't fall. And of course it was light as a feather. So now we're in a predicament. Now we got one attempt left. And the 585 was like a paperweight on my back. So he's like, okay, let's go up 785. So, okay. All right. That sounds like it's challenging. So I went down, came right up with it. So I'm pretty sure I could do over 800 back then. And this was when I had single ply suits. So the equipment has changed a lot since then. So sure. I'm pretty sure I probably would have been over 800. Now, if you saw my squatting form, I did a high bar, high traps, with a vertical
Tom Platz squat.
Straight Tom Platz squat.
Yeah.
My deadlift was, I'd only been doing a deadlift for a year, but I did 635 or 655 as one or the other. But it was over 600. And, I'd only been deadlifting for 1 year. And my bench was pretty crappy. I did 440 was the max I did in the meet. Mm-hmm. So I think my squat was as good as, Johnny Jackson's the only other guy I know. I was in a 220-pound weight class. He's the only other guy I know that could do that for a bodybuilder, squat-wise. So I always really, I miss powerlifting. I really loved it. I enjoyed it. I just, it's hard on your body, obviously. But I really, really liked it over there. I really liked it. And I still do. I'll still go, when the quarantine hit, I didn't really have access to a gym, but I did toward the end find a garage that I could go into that just had a squat rack and a bench. So I was just doing my Louie stuff. I was just doing my 8 sets of 3 and 8 sets of 2 speed work, because I enjoyed that.
Right.
And so I do miss that stuff, man. There were some phenomenal guys there. Kenny Patterson was there. Kenny Patterson would do lying dumbbell extensions, skull crushers with 100-pound dumbbells on each hand. I mean,
absurd triceps. That's insanity.
It's insanity. It's insanity. Like his tricep, like you couldn't see his elbow. It just hung over his elbow. It was so big. So Kenny was benching 700, and he was doing it in the really light weight classes. There was a guy there named George Halbert, had a real big chest. Super good guy, George. George and Kenny were battling. They were doing well over 700 back then. And they did, like I said, they didn't have the equipment that the guys have today.
No.
Matt Dimmel had just died. He was, I think, the second guy to squat 1,000. He had just died. He was amazing. Him and Chuck, you've probably heard this story, but they used to, get a little crazy, drink a little whiskey, do stuff in the gym. But
I love that. All by itself, that statement's fantastic.
It was pretty amazing. Yeah, so they got into a fight one time in a gym, and they were wrestling around, and Matt was well over 300 pounds. Actually, Matt was probably closer to 400. But he put Chuck in a headlock, and they're wrestling around. So then Chuck's lifts all start going down, and Chuck's really frustrated. He goes to the doctor, and the doctor's like, Chuck, you have a broken neck? And he was like, really? And he's like, yeah, you got a broken neck right now. So he got it fixed, and all the lifts went back up. But
you got a broken neck. Oh, that.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, Chuck's my hero. So then I was at Dave Tate's one time. This was pretty recent. Actually, I got a picture with Chuck and Dave when I was out there. I don't know. This was probably like 5 years ago. And Chuck walks in. He's got a walking boot on. And he's got some of his guys he's coaching were squatting. I said, oh, man, what happened to Chuck? And Dave said, hey, he broke his foot. I said, okay. So Chuck proceeds to walk over to squat rack, takes the cast off his leg, and he starts squatting. And I'm like, what's he doing? Like, I thought you said his foot was broke. Dave said it is. He just keeps re-breaking it. He won't stop. And I was like, okay, man. So
the boot is just so he doesn't hurt himself walking and fuck up his squats.
He's hoping it heals between the car and the rack. He's giving it a chance.
I want to say that day, he did 800 for a double or triple. And then he puts the walking boot back. It wasn't a walking boot. It was a cast. But it was a cast where you could somehow get it off.
The Velcro one, yeah.
So he puts the boot back on, puts the cast back on, comes over, we chat, and he leaves. I was like, that was crazy, man.
No register to him at all that was insanity.
Yeah.
See, there's levels of insanity where some of us like know that we're crazy, but if you don't know, you're on another level.
Well, and Chuck was funny too, because he was like the alpha lion, or he was. If he sensed they were trying to challenge him, bad news. So Dave Tate one day, you should have Dave Tate. You should ask him this story, man.
Okay.
Ask Dave about the time he kind of challenged Chuck. So Dave's kind of like, I think I can take him today. So he's kind of got that attitude with Chuck, and Chuck's like, well, let's just keep going. So they keep going, and they keep going, and they keep going. And I don't remember how many sets they did or how long they went, but Chuck basically made him keep squatting until Dave's body like literally fell apart. Like he couldn't even stand anymore. Chuck was like, okay, we're done now. So
just sets of 3 all day long?
You'll have to ask Dave. I forget the details, but man, I was in stitches laughing. And he was like, do not ever challenge Chuck. Like, don't even give it an inkling that you're challenging him, because it won't end good for you.
Right.
It's not going to go well.
It's not going to go well.
No,
I freaking love it.
People know that they see Dusty doing the crazy deadlift sets in the commercial gym, and they see, the old videos of all the best pros training in gyms, but a guy like Chuck can't go to a gym.
No.
It's just not.
Can you imagine?
I
don't think most understand what that even means, though. Like the level.
Yeah, there's just too much, and strangers would think he was violent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Chuck was pretty wild too, because one of the things I liked about Chuck was he could be really calm in between his sets, and in an instant, he could turn it on and just turn into a psychopath for his set. And as soon as he finished the set, he's right back to calm. And I think training wise, that's a really good skill to have.
For sure.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's a great skill to have. So people will ask me sometimes when they train with me, they're like, I notice you're kind of loose in between your sets. I'm like, that's intentional.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to be sitting around between my sets pacing and getting fired up. I'm like, no, save it for the hard set. Save it, do your hard set, and then come back to normal.
I was just talking about this. I don't know if you're like me, John, but occasionally you find yourself telling stories and you're like, damn, I'm making myself sound old. But I was telling my training partner about back when I was in my 20s, and how I remember I used to, the energy never stopped. Do you know what I mean? Like that mentality for the set carried through the whole workout. So I would be like vibrating between sets, and I would have my, the old hat super low, like pacing back and forth in front of the machine, pacing, huffing and puffing, like almost like I'm having an anxiety episode, like the entire workout. And I think, man, now, like, as I got older, I learned to channel better and contain the energy for the set. And that just came with maturity. But I think of to how much energy I wasted, just in all directions. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And what do you remember a time when you sort of got better at that?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Always been gifted?
No, for sure I wasn't. When I was at World Gym, I did the same thing. I would do a set, then I was growling and snarling and posing in the mirror, and then to do the next set, and then I would go home and I would take like a 2-hour nap because I was so exhausted. And there was a point where I noticed that like I couldn't get through the workouts anymore because I was so tired. So I started like pulling back a little bit, and I noticed, oh, wow, I got a little bit more strength for my last set, because if you're going all the way up in your sets, your progression, by the time you get to your last set, you've expended a lot of energy.
Yep.
And so when I noticed, and then I started reading a lot of articles. This was probably my late 20s, early 30s, about how people were talking about intensity. And I remember thinking, I agree with you guys to a point, but I don't think you need to be real intense to do a feeder set of 3. Right. That's just working up to your hard set. Like, I don't see the need to be intense. So I started reading a little bit about fight or flight and cortisol response and all that stuff. And just the more I thought about it, I thought it doesn't make any sense to be all wound up until you get to your last set. And I've actually made videos on this. Now, when you get to that 1 or 2 sets of your workout, or maybe it's 3, unleash. Do it, unleash, but not all your warm-ups, save it for that last set. And then when you finish your set, come right back down, be calm, whatever it takes. So that's how I train now. But I definitely was not like that naturally. I was in the same boat you were, Ron. I was running around the gym like going crazy and wasting a lot of energy.
Yeah. I've told this story on the show, but I've never told you, John. I'll keep it short. I went through a phase when I was at I would say it's probably one of the turning points for that mentality, where I was puking on every single leg day. Like, absolutely without fail. Like, it became so fucking normal to me. Like, my training partner was like, people would be like, oh my God, did Ron just throw up outside in the parking lot? I'd be like, oh, he pukes every leg day, like for the past 3 years straight. And then I started throwing up before my leg workout. And that's when I fucking clued in that there was something going on here that was probably draining.
Yeah. And that's not good.
And that's when I sort of started to I think that was like a tipping point where I started to go, okay, maybe I need to focus this. I can't just be radiating this crazy energy for hours before I even get to the fucking gym.
Right.
Driving myself into this frantic state. So yeah, that's just, I think controlling your, like Lee Priest often talks about how he could joke around between sets, but then just flick a light switch and squat 5 plates for 15 reps. Right. And I remember back when I was young and I read that, I thought, oh, he's not serious enough in the gym.
Yeah.
Like just,
I would agree with you. That would have been me too. I would have thought the same thing. Then you realize, there's a lot of wisdom that comes with years of training, and you don't learn this stuff in a book. There's no book that's going to teach you that. It's wisdom. It's being observational. It's keeping your mind open. It's always looking to improve. Like, I feel like even now I'm continuing to learn to this day, Well,
I think you also got to factor in, even guys that are listening to this, it's a talent to be able to do that, to be able to flip a switch, touch the bar, and be in that place. Like, I think in the beginning you need to be, like, I remember I used to have a whole routine of driving to the gym and the music I would listen to and all this stuff. And it was a production to get myself ready. And now it's funny, but I go back to like my hockey days, like when I used to have a coach, if you'd score a goal, he'd always say, act like you've done it before. Like,
right.
Fucking relax. And that's how I look at everything now. Like, I don't really, all right, it's time to do this. I've done this. And then as soon as your hand touches the bar, you know what has to happen. It happens. And then when you put it down, you're done. And it's just another day.
That's
Right.
a great quote, because I remember I said to kind of an older friend of mine that was one of my mentors, I said, man, I started throwing up before my workout. And he goes, it's just a leg workout. You've done a million of them.
Yeah.
And it was like the perspective I needed.
Right.
You know, life and death does not hinge on this workout. It's, you know, peace between nations is not dependent on my working set of leg press today. It's pretty much just matters to me, you know? So I wanted to fire off. We've had you for an hour, John. I know that you don't have anything else to do.
Thank God.
I'm good for another hour and 22 minutes.
I'll fire some of these off. Let's do a little bit of a speed round here. How do you feel about extreme stretching after a body part, intra workout? What do you think of DC stretching, etc.?
I think there's a couple of different ways to stretch. I think one of them is actually, so what I like to do, and Dusty would tell you, is in the way I program, you do an exercise that you establish a really good mind-muscle connection on, then you do more of a compound movement, then you do more, let's deliver a lot of blood and do something crazy, and then you end with a movement that puts a lot of stretch on the muscle belly itself. So like on your hamstrings, it'd be like a stiff-legged deadlift. On your chest, it'd be some kind of a fly. So first of all, I like to take the actual last exercise I do once the muscle is full of blood, and then put it through a really, really good range of motion. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you hit that extreme stretch, there's a lot of good things that can happen there. I am a little leery about static stretching if you do it too heavy. So for example, you do your triceps and then you grab a 150-pound dumbbell and you just sit there in a stretch position like this, stretching them. I'm a little leery about that. Because I think it's hard on your joints. It's hard on your elbows. And I know that because I've done that.
Right.
Like in a squat, you know, maybe you get a bar and you do 400 pounds and you just sit there with it at the bottom. And that could be really hard on your knees, you know. Mm-hmm. So I think, number one, I'm a big believer in stretching. I just think you got to be careful with it. You got to use it so that it doesn't wreck your joints. Like in a fly position, you know, there's a certain part of your arm path where you continue to go back, and now it's hard on your rotator cuff. Yep. It can create some issues.
And your pec's kind of done stretching,
Yeah, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to sit there and not stretch with that heavy weight. Like, that could be dangerous. But working through a really good full range of motion, like I did today, like the last chest exercise I did today was a machine fly, and I have a prime machine that's a variable resistance machine, so you can load it actually when you're contracting, and you can take the load off at the bottom. So now I can get real extreme with my stretch, but it's not crazy heavy.
Right.
You know,
you got
and
the
then
adjustable cam one, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. So you put the cam over, you put the number on 2, and now all of a sudden it's more tension here.
Perfect.
But down here, now I can do this crazy stretch. And that's kind of what got, so Dave and I started doing the reverse banded leg presses and hack squats in 2010. So this was about 10 years ago. And the reason why we did that is so we could get an extreme range of motion, but take a little load off the joint. Yep. It wasn't so we could show our body how strong we were by showing 8 or 9 plates.
Right.
It was just, man, it felt so good on our knees. And to this day, I've never had a knee problem. But I think you've got to put the muscle, not on every exercise, but you got to have at least one exercise where you put it through a really extreme, good range of motion. Right. And like, that's what I love with hack squats. You know, take it down real deep. You know, when we did those, these squats, the pendulum squats, I like to take those down really deep, get a good stretch. So I love the stretching concept. I think it's valid. Just be careful how you use it. That's all.
Okay.
I think the missed point with that is people want to progress with the weight on the stretch as well, and you don't need to.
You don't need to. That's not.
I've been using the same weights since 2010 on my extreme stretching that I use now. What I look for is how am I feeling this? That's the other thing, is they get so attached to the number of how long they're holding. If it's not in your chest anymore and you're stretching your chest, you're done.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't just fucking hold on because you're doing it, you know? So that's the key. And I think that's where a lot of it gets lost, is it's combined in progressive training. So they're trying to progress with that. And it's like, you got to use your head too. If the muscle's done feeling, you're done. It might be I mean, I've had days where I can hang on a lat stretch for 2 minutes. I've had days where it's 30 seconds. But I'm good. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and so that's the key. You know, it's paying attention to those things. Here's a good one, John, a quick one that I like, though, because it's a common question right now. Why EAAs over BCAAs?
Well, so this is very debatable. I try to look at everything from all sides possible. And a lot of people will say, if you have a whole food protein source, you've got all the essential aminos already in your body. They make a good point. BCAAs by themselves, you cannot create new muscle tissue with them. It's an incomplete protein. You need six other aminos in addition to the branch chains. Branch chains are important, but if you use branch chains, your body needs complete protein, so it's got to go somewhere else to get the phenylalanine, the tryptophan, the histidine. It's got to go somewhere else to get them. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll tell you why I like them. Because you remember when I was referring to 2011 and 12 when I had the real good recovery?
Yes.
That's when I was a guinea pig for a company, and we were using a whole protein. It was really expensive, though. So I flipped it into EAAs, and I started combining it with cluster dextrin, and all of a sudden I couldn't get sore anymore. Mm-hmm. So it didn't matter how much I had eaten up to that point. It didn't matter how big my pre-workout meal was. It didn't matter how big my post-workout meal was. There was something about putting those nutrients in your body while you trained that managed recovery incredibly well. And I experimented with all my clients back then. And I would say I had a good success rate on probably 95% of them. They were all like, kept getting all these messages, John, I'm not training hard enough. Why do you say that? Because I'm not getting sore anymore. I'm like, no, that's because we started using this intra-workout protocol. And, so there's not a ton of science on it, but the science that I have seen measures, there's a measure called 3-methylhistidine. That's a measure of muscle protein breakdown that's in your urine. Mm-hmm. And if you use a certain diet, like a low meat diet, you can actually get a real good indication of how much muscle protein breakdown you have. And when carbs are combined with essential aminos, you see a much, much lower amount of muscle protein breakdown. Now, is it from the higher insulin? Insulin is I don't care what anybody says. In my heart, I believe insulin is anti-catabolic. It's shoving nutrients into your muscle, which is a very good thing. So I feel like the EAs give you better recovery, and one of the biggest things that, Ron, earlier you asked me, what are some things that are different now? I used to judge the success of a workout based on how sore I got. Looking back now, I think what an idiot I was. That's not a vindicator of anything. That could have been poor nutrition, poor sleep. It could mean you overtrained. It doesn't mean anything. And, when I started using the intra plan, I didn't get sore for years. Like, I got to the point where I don't like being sore. I don't like being sore now. I don't like anything. Like, I hate it.
I want to wake up till I feel good.
I want to feel awesome. I want to be able to run around with my kids. Like, I don't want to feel crippled. So, and anytime I would take out my intra just to experiment, or I would change and rotate ingredients because I was always trying to figure out what worked the best and what was the cheapest, every time, I'm sore as hell again. Like, I get really sore when I would take it out. So, there's a lot of people that don't think nutrient timing matters. I'm like, if it really doesn't matter, like if you really believe it doesn't matter, train at noon and then fast all day and don't use your feeding window until 6 o'clock at night. Get all your calories in.
Right.
Take food away from your workout.
Right.
Do that. Let me know how you feel.
Right.
Every single person will go, my God, I'm so sore now. Because they're all going to say, well, muscle protein synthesis is ramped up for 24 to 48 hours only. Well, guess what? That's only one half of the net protein balance equation. You also have to figure in muscle protein breakdown. So to me, the way you eat and the way you supplement during training is a very big deal. I know a lot of people don't like to believe that. And for people who don't train hard, it's probably not a big deal. But when you train really hard, that stuff matters.
Right. No, for sure.
I have a very serious one here because we've just been all fun and games. If you can only have pizza, pancakes, or donuts for the rest of your life, you have to pick one.
If the donuts were from San Diego, the donut bar, I would definitely take that.
Oh, okay. Let's get creative with this answer. Okay.
The donut bar is amazing. They have donuts that have full Pop-Tarts inside of them.
A full Pop-Tart.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That makes it bodybuilding food.
I see. Yeah, that makes it a Tom Platz. That makes it a Tom Platz post-workout meal.
That's right.
You are set to go. Oh shit, that's good stuff.
What about best pancakes? You can't just give me the best donuts. I need the best pancakes.
The best pancakes I've had
from the expert.
Probably if you go to Tennessee, like if you go to Gatlinburg, there's a
gotta fly everywhere.
So here's what happens. There's not going to be nothing local, right? So
you can't give me a chain. There's no franchises that are winning this. It's all like you got to go to this one store.
That's like pizza. It's not going to happen either. I mean, come on.
No. I mean,
if grandma's not cooking it, I'm not interested.
So when I travel, every time we go somewhere, we have a routine. Like my wife figures out where the church is. She's like, "Where's the church? We got to find the church." And I'm always like, "Where's the donuts and pancakes?" Particularly the donuts.
Right.
So everywhere we go, my wife can tell you where the Catholic Church is, and I can tell you where the best donut shops are.
Very important.
So number one is I try to find the best donut shops. So I can tell you about donut places all over the country. Pancake places, there's some good ones. The Pancake House is actually really good. That's a kind of a chain. It's really good. That's probably one of the better ones. I mean, they've got the chocolate peanut butter 3,000 calorie monster pancakes.
Oh yeah. Okay. I knew you were expert on more than just training and nutrition.
That is nutrition.
Yeah, I guess, he's also a leisure time specialist. It's funny because the joke about the COVID lockdown was I realized my number one hobby was going to restaurants.
Yeah,
and I was like, holy shit. Depressed. Yeah.
Nothing to do now.
Eating out.
I got one for you, John.
I used to play a lot of poker too. Yeah, I used to be an online poker player. I used to table hotel poker all the time.
No way.
Actually, when you walk in my house, the big formal dining room table, it's actually a poker table. It's actually, you could pull the lid off and it's a real poker table.
That's awesome.
So you don't play anymore?
With Olympia time, when I go to Vegas, I play a lot. Actually, you know what? Hang on for 1 second. I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to show you how legit I am.
Yes.
I love it. Our show is getting so much better now that people are leaving the room or taking.
We got a house. Anytime someone gets out of the chair, the show goes up a notch.
Oh, for sure.
Because we know they're coming back with something.
Or we're going in the yard.
Okay, I lied.
I was safe this time.
Okay, I think my kid must have taken it. When you win tournaments at Caesars, they give you the coolest little poker coin.
Oh, no way.
I was going to show you that, but I think Alexander must have taken.
So you won a tournament at Caesars?
Oh yeah. That's
awesome.
Who are you playing? Was Michael Jordan at the table?
No, it was a tournament. I mean, it's a freeze out tournament. It's a legit tournament. It's not just like a little sit and go or anything like that.
Right. So come on, throw a number. What's the biggest hand you ever played?
I can tell you one that I made a guy cry. So I had king, and a guy had ace queen, and on the flop he hit an ace and a queen, so he had two pair, and he's just talking all kinds of trash to me. He's going crazy. Then the turn was a blank, and then the river was a king. So I had trip kings, and he had his two pair, right? And he cried, he was so mad, he was crying. He threw his cards down, and that knocked him out of the tournament. But he was very unhappy. He was extremely unhappy. And I'm trying to think of the very last tournament I won. So I had I had ace king, and I raised, and a guy calls me with 9-9. All right. So the flop comes ace 9 something. So there's only like 6 of us left by that point in the tournament. It's very deep in the tournament. So of course he pushes all of his chips in. I had maybe 10% more chips than he had. Of course I call. You can't fold that. So he has trip 9s, and he beats me, and he gets me all the way down to I only had enough chips. There's still 6 of us. I only had enough chips left to get through one round of blinds. Okay. So I don't have any chips left, so I got to put mine in, and I have 3-7, right? So like 3 people at the table call me to get me out of the tournament. Right. So a 3 hits on the flop, then there's a blank on the turn, and then a 7 hits on the river. So all those people that went in essentially doubled me up. So all of a sudden I'm not back in it, but now I've got enough to be a little bit more careful. So then I go all in again, and I double up, and then I double up again, and then I was a chip leader like 3 hands later.
That's why you love poker.
Yeah.
Oh,
Poker
shit.
is so fun, man. I love it. So
I'm a sort of a little bit afraid of gambling.
Well, do you only play against other people? Don't play against the house. If you play against the house, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but playing against other people, I can hold my own against other people, you know.
Damn.
Aria's got some pretty good players there, man. Like if you want to get in some tough tournaments, there's some good players there.
Damn.
Caesars, dude, like 90% of the people are not good. Like you can read them, you can just look at their face, and you pretty much know if they have something good or not. It's a very easy place to play.
No, notice how he never told me what the biggest hand he ever played for was.
Yeah. He skipped it.
He's like, that was it.
Well, I play tournaments, though. I play tournaments. I don't play.
It's not about that. It's about the very end.
Right. Yeah. The very end. Yes.
It's what you take home. Here's a good one for you, John, because it's where the hell did it go? Of course, I just scanned down. Find it here. Okay. How's your training mindset and application changed with injury and age?
Well, that all changed in my 30s. So when I was in my 20s, I used to bench press first, and I got so many strains, black and blue pecs. At some point, I just said, this is stupid. Like, it's only a matter of time before I tear something. And I was young, but I was aware enough to know that I didn't have a pretty body. So if you take an ugly body like I have, and then you throw a severe muscle tear in it, I knew that'd be the end of any professional dream I had.
Right.
So I backed out of the barbell pressing first, and I moved it second, and all of a sudden my chest started getting bigger. I was like, wow, not only is this safer, it's actually, I'm getting more in my pecs. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of applied that as a general philosophy. If something feels really hard on my connective tissue, let's get it later on if it's a movement worth doing. Mm-hmm. And that was a game changer for me. Like, I hate saying that word, but that was real big difference for me. That saved me. You know, I get strains just like everybody else. That's a part of training hard. But tears, I don't think you can say it's just a part of training. I don't believe that. I think that you're at risk. Yeah. But I think if you plan your training in a certain way, I think you can lower the potential for tears big time. You know, I mean, I made that post the other day on Instagram, and of course somebody said, no, if something's going to tear, it's going to tear. I'm like, I don't agree with that. Why is it going to tear? Like, why did it get to that point in the first place?
Yeah.
Like, if I would have kept benching first, I know I would have torn my pec. And then I could have easily said, well, it was going to tear anyway. No, it was going to tear because I had weakened it from that methodology that I was using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was not good. That's why it was going to tear. Not just because. And then, you know, you look at then there's some nuances to it too. You know, you take like natural guys, their weights aren't going up as fast, you know, so they can handle a little bit more of this stuff. They don't have the connective tissue risk that an enhanced guy does, you know, particularly someone who's gained a lot of strength real quick. When I see someone who's changed dramatically and gained a lot of strength real quick, and they're doing real heavy benches and things like that first, in my mind, what I hear is the tear is coming. It might be in a year, it might be in 2 years, but a tear is coming. Yeah, and I've seen it with so many of my friends here locally. I've seen it over and over and over with my friends. And I used to tell them, man, are you sure you want to be benching him? Well, I do 400 pounds. Like, that's cool, man, but are you really sure you need to be doing that first?
Right.
And then pop, there goes their pec. I've seen so many guys locally do that here. And then, of course, in bodybuilding over the years, you see it too. But, you know, that is a very simple adjustment to make that I think can change your longevity big time.
I think the 405 for reps, barbell flat bench has torn more pecs than all other exercises combined.
Yeah.
It's definitely.
I mean, that's fact. That is straight.
There's a clue there that guys have to clue into. And that's, I mean, I had a post show, you know, when you're young and you do, you know, you get that post show rebound and your strength goes stupid. Yep. I remember when I was young, coming off one of my first shows, I could bench 3.5 plates for like 6 reps in the gym. Right. So post show, like 2 weeks post show, I go in and it's 3.5 plates for like 13. And I'm like, holy fuck, I'm so strong today. And tore my tricep benching that day. You know, And I remember thinking, wow, this is like crazy strong. Like
that should have been your warning.
That was a warning.
Boom, boom, boom.
It's not supposed to feel this light.
Know,
I
just got 13. I can do another set with it and probably get 9 or 10.
Well, the interesting thing about that is like I tell my training partners when we're training together, if I feel really strong, I always say, this means it's time to be really careful.
Right.
Like that's the time you got to be really careful. Oh yeah, I'm going to blow. And then like you do too much. Like connective tissue, man.
I remember Dorian told me, he said that he'd had some injuries and he'd hurt the bicep. And it was like the year after that, he was doing leg extensions one day. And he said the whole leg extension machine was moving. And they had like 2 plates pinned to the stack. And he's doing like this 250-pound stack with 2 plates on it and exploding so powerfully that the machine was moving on the floor. And he remembers thinking like, fuck, I'm a danger to myself.
Yeah.
You know, I've already torn a few things. And now, like, you know what I mean? So just so much power and strength and, you know, channeling it in an exercise like leg extensions.
Yeah, you're already begging for it.
You know? So here, I got one here. Where'd it go? Oh, yeah. Do you ever miss the amateur NPC circuit?
Absolutely not. No.
There wasn't even a slowdown.
You'd be like,
no.
Okay, yeah. No,
here's what happens. Here's my memories. And Dusty, actually, you were in it too. So you guys can confirm this. Here's what happens backstage. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Heavies, line up. Line up or you're disqualified. Get your butt back here. Heavies, line up. And then you sit there for an hour.
Right.
And then your pump is going. Right?
Right.
Now, compare that to doing a pro show. Hey, Dusty, hey, Ron, you're going to be on about 20 minutes. So get warmed up. We're going to have you lined up. 20 minutes later, hey, Ron, hey, Dusty, let's go ahead and get in line. That's the difference.
Yep, it's true. It's very true.
My pro bodybuilding competition history is very short, and but it was a great memory. I said that my pro show experience, I was completely blown away at how it just felt like we were all guest posing.
Exactly. It's just totally different. I had a guy
on stage, we're competitive and stuff, but it was the least competitive environment I had ever been in as a bodybuilder.
That was Vancouver. You did Vancouver, right?
Yeah, no one gave a fuck. Like everyone's just like, hey man, like sitting around. Everyone was an equal. Everyone was like sharing everything. There was nobody like, I remember just backstage at Nationals with 30 super heavyweights or backstage at North Americans with 30 super heavyweights. There's just so much chaos.
Yep.
Chaos. Get in line, then you stand there for an hour.
Everyone eyeballing each other. There's so much ego, just thick ego curtain hanging in the air. Everyone stepping on each other's fucking, just crazy sort of high tension, high anxiety sort of a vibe. And then the pro show was like, hey, do I need more oil?
Yeah.
Let me get it for you.
Hey, Fuad, do I need more oil? Like, just so funny. Like, just such a complete difference. And obviously, I know that wasn't the Olympia. I know there's, tensions run high at some of the shows, but that was just it was how I compare it.
Yeah, I mean, I did my second pro show was Tampa Pro, and I remember backstage, I'll never forget it. That was the best crew. Those guys were so helpful. But they literally said, you've got 17 minutes, you've got 14 minutes, you've got 11 minutes. Like they were counting it down. I went to use the bathroom, and I'm in there using the bathroom, and a guy pops his head in. He goes, hey, John, I just wanted to let you know you've got 7 minutes. And I'm like, wow. He didn't yell at me. I thought he was going to yell at me. And then
I'm so used to get yelled at.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Like, they treated us so good. You're absolutely right. You feel like a guest poser. They treat you so good.
Yeah.
So, do I? No, I definitely don't miss those amateur days.
That's the greatest answer, John. It's funny because when I think of that, I'm like, I'm not even thinking about that part of it. And then you have that, like, oh, yeah, I do remember that. I used to hurry up and wait.
I got one for you before I forget. It was on here. I know it's Dusty's turn, but I don't want to lose it. What do you think? And I don't know your ideal formula, but what do you think people should focus on pre-workout?
I think having enough carbs to fuel you. It's a very easy energy source. So I'm not saying a lot. I'm saying just enough. I'm saying a little bit of fat, so you slow down how quickly glucose can get in your bloodstream, so you have stable blood sugar. You obviously want to have protein that digests easy, that doesn't sit in your stomach. You don't want to have a 16-ounce steak 15 minutes before you train. So that helps turn on protein synthesis. And right. That's it. That's a good balanced meal. If you want to take a powder, I would focus on something that is heavier and nootropically and for blood flow, as I would just massive doses of caffeine. And, the companies that do that now. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they're the companies with the big budgets. So they market and they have all these athletes, but their formulas are pretty crappy. So I would say that small to medium-sized meal that has time to digest. And then if you need some extra blood flow or low energy, you can use a supplement. That's all I got.
What would you say to people? I know a lot of younger guys that I think they're way, way, way overdoing the stims. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them to get them to second guess their overuse of stimulants, like high doses of caffeine, like we're talking 500 milligrams, 2 scoops of this, 2 scoops of that?
Yeah.
I mean, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, caffeine habituates. So you're going to need to get more and more and more to do the same job. So that little 30 servings you think you got is actually really only going to be 10 servings. But beyond that, the beneficial effects can get outweighed by the vasoconstrictive effects. So now all of a sudden your blood vessels start to actually constrict, which doesn't happen with smaller doses. Smaller doses can give you some energy, can give you a little boost. But when you're just pounding them more and more and more, and then you got to look at, how long are they going to be in fight or flight? What's their blood pressure doing? Like, is it straining their heart? Like, you got to kind of look at all. It's not that the one time is going to hurt you, but doing it over and over and over for years. I don't have a problem with a little caffeine, but when you start mega dosing it and your body gets used to it, and if you rely on that to motivate you, you're in trouble.
Yep.
Like if that's what you need to get motivated, a mega dose of caffeine, you're in trouble. You're already in trouble right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Agreed. What do you think about crystalline fructose before training, John?
It's okay. There's nothing special about it. If you're concerned about liver glycogen and maybe just trying to get a little liver glycogen, it's okay. You obviously wouldn't want to do any fructose at a higher dose, so you could have gastric problems, farting and gas and all that. So a little bit of it's fine. I think a little bit's fine.
Yeah, I was curious because there was a stint there where companies were putting it in some of their pre-products, not the pre's with caffeine and things, but almost like a before intros became a thing. And I thought that was an interesting ingredient because of how it worked. You know what I mean? But then they all disappeared. So the assumption was obviously that it didn't sell.
There's nothing special about it. I personally like clusterdextrin. Just if you go to glico.com, that's the company that made it. You can see the molecular structure and how it has these side chains and how it provides steady energy. The original studies were actually done on endurance athletes with clusterdextrin, but it gives you a steady supply. I don't like stuff that makes your blood sugar go up and down. I don't like that at all.
Right.
Because that down part, like the last thing you want is to be in the middle of a workout and get hypoglycemic or right when the workout's over.
I fucking hate that.
Hate that, man, with a passion. But so I like the nice steady level, little bit of energy, and clusterdextrin, and actually Palatinose is kind of a simple version of it. Those will give you a little bit of a lift and some energy, but they won't spike your insulin. So I really like those.
So what do you do, across the board? And I know you've got your line as well, but if somebody was piecing together an intra, what are some baselines you would say, like clusterdextrin, EAAs, all that? What would you tell them to toss at it?
Clusterdextrin, EAAs, and electrolytes would be the foundation of the formula.
How many grams of carbs would you default to just to start?
20 to 40.
Okay.
20 to 40.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then aminos, 10 grams, 6 or 7 of it.
But aren't you going to need 300 grams if you're taking 30 units insulin?
I was going to say, depends on how much insulin you're taking, right? Depends on how much Humalog you're doing. I never liked the 10 to 1 theory. I always liked to be a little bit more in carbs. So 12 to 1 or 15 to 1. But then what happens is your insulin receptors, man, they get dulled real easily. Like you get used to it real quick. So then you can actually go down to like 5 to 1 because you get used to it. Because I think that's one of the reasons why people get so fat when they take insulin. Well, number one, they take insulin that repeaks. So now all of a sudden they're shoving sugar in, and then 2 hours later it's repeaking. I always felt like Milos was really onto this. I'm going to give him credit. I didn't come up with this. But I always liked his idea of using something fast-acting like Humalog to load your muscle cells with nutrients when you train. Right. And that can actually be an awesome part of recovery as well, just honestly. But I think what happens is your insulin receptors, they get kind of dulled, is the term I use, pretty easily. Right. So then you take more insulin, then the next thing you know, you're taking 20, 30, 40, 50 units. I hear guys taking 100 units now. I hear guys taking Lantus all day and then putting Humalog or R throughout the day. I'm like, you guys are nuts, man. You're nuts. Yeah.
I remember, I've told this story before, but I remember when I was first touring with Rich Piana and we were doing the Arnold Classic Expo, and he was like, I'm going to be so full for the Expo tomorrow. You just wait and see me. And then he showed up in the morning and he had all this juice and cookies and stuff, and he was just eating and drinking. And I was like, how much insulin did you take? He goes, I took 100 units this morning. Wow. And I was like, man. Because like, you know, I'm someone with normal insulin sensitivity, 100 units. I don't even know if they could keep up with the food.
There's no way.
Yeah. But if you're already down regulated a lot, 100 units was probably like 10 units to him.
Yeah.
Dude, I can't even imagine 20 units.
Yeah.
I'd be wrecked in an hour. Like,
it was full though.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. Might have been the PMMA in his muscle too.
Yeah, very full. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have another one, Dusty?
Basically, I think the big factor that all my guys are coming back to is you've got everyone jammed on the things to be taking pre and post, John. It's funny. These are questions I don't get. Like, a guy want to know also, injectable L-Carnitine usage pre-workout. Thoughts if it's even worth using?
First of all, I love it. I just think people take it wrong. I think it's great for fat loss. I had great success with it, but people, you have to be in a hyper insulinic state when you take it to establish the pathway to actually push carnitine into the mitochondria. So you have to have carbs with it, and
you have to be carb.
You have to be carb, and you don't need much insulin. You can take 2-3 units of Humalog to establish that pathway. You can do it without insulin with just regular carbs, but it's going to take a couple months. It takes a lot longer to establish it. But I see people when they use it, they're like using it before they do cardio. They're like, oh, I'm going to burn so much fat. I'm like, actually, it's not even established. You're not pushing anything into mitochondria. That's not how, that's just not how I would get the most benefit from it. But, I would start at 12 weeks out from a show. And I never really loaded on either. I know a lot of people like to load on it. I just took straight 2 milliliters of it. With a tiny bit of Humalog before training. I never did it around cardio. There are some people that will take a tiny bit of insulin and actually do it with cardio, but I would rather, if you're going to take the Humalog, like you're going to take it before training, so why not have this incredible effect, while you train? So I like it. It makes you sweat a lot. It's good for fat loss. So the only problem now, a lot of the preparations burn real bad and they leave sore spots on people. I never had that problem when I used it. The kind I used would go in like water. It was like water, and I never had an issue. But now these people are telling me it hurts and it's creating pain and everything. And I'm like, man, that's kind of weird. Like, I never had that.
Right. Makes you wonder what the hell they're doing to cheapen the process of doing something that's already cheap.
Just way too much alcohol or something.
That's the first thing I think. That's the first thing I think is I had a conversation today with a guy, Terrence actually. We were, just comparing what I was telling him what I used to see and what I see now. And I was telling him, like, I do think there is something to the theory that the stuff was cleaner in the old days. The old Parabolan amps, the old Primo amps, the old Masteron amps. I do think there's something about I know 99% of people disagree with me, but I do think there was something about the chems then versus now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're underdosed now or if they're because what a lot of these underground labs will do is they'll build something good and they'll test it and it looks good and then they show the lab test, but then that's not what they sell.
Down. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's why I don't trust a lab test.
Yeah.
But I do think some of the stuff in the older days was a lot cleaner. A lot of the ampules, that's why you had guys taking 2 ampules of Parabol and, 76 times 2. And then the guys that were hardcore were taking 3 amps. So 76 times 3. And now you got coaches that go, well, you got to take 1,000 mgs of tren. I'm like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
So, but oh well.
I had 10 amps of Parabolin in like 1995.
Oh, that was when it was running then.
And they were almost expired. They were like months away from being expired, and I got my hands on them.
So you took them all, right?
Oh yeah,
day one.
In one day.
No, yeah. I remember reading about I was like, fuck, I got to stretch these out as long as possible, right? So I took one every 5 days because it had that long half-life, right? Is that hexo carbo, whatever tren it was. And so I took one every 5 days. So it lasted for 50 days. And the only other thing I ever felt that kick from was the first time I took real Syntex Anadrol.
I knew you were going to say that. The 2902s.
There you go.
I knew you were going to say that, man. The
Syntex
2902s. Yeah.
Syntex Anadrol and Syntex Anapolon 50, the foreign version, but they were both identical. But yeah, those two things, the Parabolin and the real Anadrol, were like out of this world. Nothing ever afterwards ever even remotely compared to them at all ever. And it's never ever been matched by any drug ever.
Never. I agree. I was telling Terrence that the first time I took those 2902s, I woke up with a pump. Like,
yeah. I remember the first time I did dumbbell shoulder presses, I was like 3 days into Anadrol, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, just like they felt like nothing. Like my work set was my prep set. I was like, what the fuck? Like 20 pounds already,
Yeah, it was insane.
Well, we got one more for you.
Okay.
This is from Mr. BC 2012. He trains at my gym sometimes. If everyone competes, who wins the 2020 Olympia?
Man.
Who is everyone, by the way? Is that Kai, Phil?
Yeah, I think that's everyone. That's
okay.
The whole list, Flex Lewis, fucking everyone. Rodin's back, everyone.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes it interesting.
Phil's back, everyone's back. It's a fucking all out. Everyone who's alive and healthy is on stage at their best.
So let's do a little breakdown here. Let's
you gotta do it right. I agree.
Let's spend some time on this one. So Kai, first of all, he's not going to show up.
No.
Kai will not show up.
No.
He will not show up. Phil was honestly who popped into my head first if he fixes the stomach problem. Brandon, I would just like to see a little more muscle separation. And the thing about Brandon I really like is he's not resting on his laurels. Like he's like, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better.
He will.
I love his attitude. I also think that Flex Lewis has got to be in that conversation. And I can tell you why, because I saw him many times when he was 225. Shredded at 225. He looks like he's 240.
Yep.
He's got to be in that conversation. I know that when you put him next to like a big Rami, he's not going to have the structure. But Flex at 225 is so complete. When he gets down to 212, his shoulders, his quads, and his chest wash out. Flex at 225 is deadly.
And thick.
Deadly.
So thick.
Super thick. He's deadly. And he doesn't really have any weaknesses when he's at 225. You only see his weaknesses when he comes down to 212. Yeah. But taking that limit off, man, I don't think people understand how good he is.
Also, I think Flex almost always lost condition dehydrating. Like you see how dry and crunchy he is at 225, 230?
Yeah.
He doesn't even look like he needs to dry out.
Yeah, it is, and I know that because the same thing happens to me. The muscle has a different look to it.
Like he just looks dry already. Just walking, crazy.
It's a when you get to, for me it was about 219 is right. Going down to 212, it's like my muscle doesn't look the same. There's a different look to it, and it's not a positive. It's a negative.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing happens to Flex. When he's 225, it's like that's it right there. But he had to make the weight. So now with him not having to make the weight, I think if Rami could get tighter, he's in the conversation. But at this point, it's like, will he get tighter? I love the guy. I love that guy, man. I'd love to see him do well. I just don't know at this point if he hasn't really nailed it by now, if he's going to,
Yeah.
And I love that guy, man. He's a family man. He's a good dad. Sean, I don't know. Sean went through obviously a lot of stress. And stress, what he's going under, that stress can really wreck you, man. It can really wreck you. So I don't know. I mean, he's getting older. He's not as old as I am, but a lot of these guys are getting older too. Sean's older, Phil's older. Isn't it crazy to think back, like Lee Haney retired? How old was Lee Haney when
31. 31.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling, like it used to be, because if you remember the old masters class, it was over 35.
Right.
I mean, no. Originally it was
old 40.
It was over 40 originally. Then they backed.
Yeah.
But originally, like when you hit 35 years old, like you were done.
Yeah.
Right.
And now think about this. Like think about like Dexter and Phil Heath. All these guys are over 40, and they're amazing. It didn't used to be possible. But I think you got to look at Phil. I think you got to look at Flex. I think you got to look at Brandon. And then I think Rami would be my fourth one, assuming he's really good. But if not, maybe Sean. I just don't know. Sean's been through a lot, man. I just don't know how much of a toll it's taken on him.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a little add-on. If you're looking at Flex, is William Bonac a threat? Can he win an Olympia?
The thing about Williams' body is
he wins an Arnold.
He wins an Arnold. I think his body's kind of maxed out. If he puts on more weight, I think it's going to hurt his look.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his legs are starting to go the other way.
Right.
Maybe that was just the last show he did.
Right.
When he's full and popping, like when he won the Arnold, he's deadly.
Yeah.
He's deadly. I think for him to win, though, the other guys have to be off.
Right.
Okay. Wisdom from the Mountain Dog.
Oh,
Thanks, John.
I probably got it completely backwards, man. But
Well, what do you know?
None of us know until they show up.
my dark horse at the Arnold was Kuklo, and he did really well. I knew he was going to do well.
But he was our guy too. We knew he was going to be in there.
Yeah,
We nailed it. We nailed him right in his placing even.
Yeah. Well, what did he get, third or fourth?
No, he was fourth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did really good on the Arnold, but my Olympia predictions the year before were completely off. I thought Roley was going to win.
Right. Oh, that's funny. I actually told people I thought he would too.
I thought he was going to win based on how he looked at the Olympia before.
Yeah, and the fact that he got third. Yeah.
And he got third. Like I was there. I was in about the 10th row, and when he walked out, he was the first guy to come out.
Yeah.
He walked out. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Right.
And I think he had a strong case for even second place.
Yeah, I mean that was the year that Phil and Roden beat him, and they were both gone. That's why I moved him up, right?
Yeah, man. I thought then he.
But that sort of thinking, it doesn't matter in bodybuilding, does it?
Not with this logic, you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, John. We really appreciate it. I know you get invited on all the shows. You're one of those guests that is just can never fail. You always got a story, always got an explanation, and with all the history and wisdom, our listeners are going to hopefully come out of this better bodybuilders, better people, maybe. Hey.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be on here with both you guys. Obviously, I think the world of both of you, so I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we're glad to have you around to talk to. So
that's a scary statement. That's true.
Let's avoid round 3. Let's avoid that. Put it off for another 4.
All right.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks, John. You bet, man.
See you later.
Peace the Mountain Dog. So that was great. I had a good time. I'm glad we got John on. I know he does a lot of podcasts and interviews, and I was like, man, we got to make sure it's not like can't just grill him with that, technical training questions.
Yeah.
But we still, you know what I mean? But it was fun. So I hope he enjoyed himself, and he wore the best shirt.
Always. Well, you knew that was coming. I like how he played it off, though. He covered it up. Like you said, it was an unveiling.
Yeah. Tilt your camera down. Oh, no problem.
It's like you guys talked before the show. He's like, and then I need you to ask me to tilt my camera down.
Right. So how are things going for Dusty?
Things are good, man. I had a little scare last week. The city of Scottsdale decided that everyone needed to wear masks everywhere, which left me less than pleased. I kind of felt like I was putting the condom on after sex, but
right.
I was kind of like, oh, we're gonna do that now, okay? But it actually worked out fine because my only thing, I mean, truthfully, like, you want me to put a stupid mask on and walk in a grocery store, that's fine, whatever. But I wasn't gonna train in one. I don't see how that's gonna happen. So I was like, all right, well, I've got places that'll let me do whatever. And then obviously I know there's medical things I can get done that'll make sure I don't have to. Next thing I know, gyms are sending out emails that say, like, listen, you need to wear a mask walking in and exiting the gym.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's some places doing that here. You have to wear a mask until you work out, and then you can take it off. Yeah,
so the funny thing is what I also found from friends that own businesses is business suicide to tell people they have to wear a mask.
Oh, yeah, it does seem to be that way.
Like immediately because I have a friend whose business is a pay per month situation, and they sent out an email, and in the 7 minutes that the email had been sent, he had 15 cancellations before he could change the email and send another one.
Right.
Like, never mind, fuck off, we'll figure this out.
Yeah. It's like some of the businesses that embrace the kind of like overly ridiculous radical left woke stuff. Mm-hmm. They've got that saying, go woke, go broke.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, it's just, and again, I've had a bunch of people, even friends of mine, they're like, I don't know why you make it such a big deal. And I'm like, because I see the world different, and all I'm seeing is things getting inched away, and you guys are just letting it roll. It's not about wearing a fucking mask. That's the thing you're confused on. My comparison here was, we shut the city down, and that felt painful. Then we gave it back. Then we say, okay, now you have to wear masks. Well, that doesn't seem nearly as bad as the gym being closed or the restaurants being closed. But I said, yeah, it's comparable to if your husband beats your ass every night and then he switches it to just emotional abuse.
He switches it. He's just calling you a bitch now.
Now he's not punching you in the face, so it's not so bad. And I mean, stupid. It's funny because when you think of it in such a ridiculous way, it makes sense. It's like, oh, because if I started with emotional abuse, that doesn't work either.
I actually ordered some bandanas a while ago because I thought, if we have anything that becomes mandatory for masks here, I'm just going to do the bank robber bandana and let it hang.
So you can breathe.
I think I can breathe through that. Mm-hmm. And it could actually, I don't know, feel like a bank robber.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I actually said that the other day when I went to AJ's. I go, this is the first time I came in and I feel like I might consider robbing you just because I'm ready.
Well, all you need is a city with no police force now, and you got it made.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing here is all the cities that announced this, almost immediately, the police department said, we will not be enforcing it.
Oh, the mask stuff.
Because they got too much shit to do.
Yeah, right now is not a little bit of a busy time for them.
Yeah, they're like, you don't wear a mask? Cool. Me neither.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was funny because I went in the very first day because I was pretty heated. I went over to my usual spot the next morning and I was ready. I'm going in bold. I got no mask on. I come around the corner. There's 24 rich dudes sitting out there at the tables, no mask on. I'm like, oh, so none of us give a fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it. And I asked the guy, I was like, so what do you guys think about the mask thing? He goes, I didn't get where I am by listening to people.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, okay.
I did see a funny meme that made me laugh. It was like everyone complaining about masks, but it's actually my dream. With masks and sunglasses on, no one recognizes me. I don't have to talk to anybody. It was like I walk around my hometown completely unbothered by anyone.
Unscathed. Let's do this. I saw my mom the other day. I should know.
Yeah, I was able to dodge her.
It's fucking gold.
No, we're doing exceptionally well here. I don't know. I don't see things going sideways where we're at. We seem to have a really good hold on it. So it's going to keep pumping through life, Dusty. You know how it is.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully they'll open up the border soon and we can come play.
I don't want any of you crazy Americans coming up here.
Come on. You know we do it right down here. Look how much fun we're having.
Yes, I know.
Your city hasn't burnt in a long time.
No, not since the 2011 Stanley Cup. Not since we won the cup. It was the last time we had a riot here.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dusty. It was a great episode. I guess 45, man?
I know, crazy.
Yeah.
They're still coming back for more. We're doing something right.
So, 52 will be a year. We got to remember we're creeping up on a year.
That's frightening.
And our consistency has been unbelievable. I remember when we started this, I thought, getting me and Dusty to both come together on a Monday is going to be a challenge. I bet we get 2 episodes a month done.
on a schedule, like a time.
And then we realize that we both actually like doing it, and we both actually prioritize it, you know?
I actually have this marked as date with Ron. It's weird.
Right. Okay, thanks, buddy. And remember, everybody, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that stuff helps us out. If you got ideas for people you want to see on the show, let us know. We've already got so many suggestions from you, but sometimes it works out really well. And remember, everybody, it's just bodybuilding.